Join the Marty Army.
All right, so now the show begins because my good friends Steve Downs and Jen Taylor are joining me on the dream stage, which is the big stage, but this is my dream stage. To have you folks on with me is great. So welcome to this little get-together.
Marty, thank you very much. It's been way too long, and I'm delighted to hear your voice and delighted to share this with you. This is going to be a blast.
Yeah, Steve was saying before we got on here that he hasn't seen you in, 10 years?
Well, 12 years now.
12 years?
It was the Halo 10th anniversary of Combat Evolved and the big to-do in Seattle. And
that's when we met.
And that's when you and I met. And
yeah, I remember introducing, or you guys had already introduced to yourselves to each other, but I introduced you on stage because I weaseled my way on.
I just walked up and jumped on Steve's back. I think that's how I introduced myself.
I believe it was something like that. Yes. Yeah. So that was a very momentous occasion, that's for sure, for a lot of reasons.
Well, you know what? I think it'll be fun to sort of just talk through some of the earliest memories we have of each other and Halo and that whole thing and get that out of the way. And then I also just want to just talk to you about life in general and like what else are you interested in? What are you doing with your lives? And we can just have fun talking about that. But one of the things I need to announce to the audience first and foremost is we just got regrets from Jeff Steitzer. He wanted to be here. A personal emergency came up in the last 24 hours, and he's on a plane and he's fine, but he's not going to be able to join us today. So that'll be a rain check. We'll get Jeff on the show some point in the future because I know he wants to do it, and he would have been a nice contrasty voice to the two people.
Indeed.
But
it's a shame.
Yes, the story I wanted to tell is I'm going to tell my side of this first. Okay. When I moved to Redmond and Microsoft bought Bungie, one of my thoughts was on the Halo cast. I knew we were going to cast all new voices for Halo. And I thought to myself, well, everybody I know is back in Chicago, but I'm going to open up a new can of actors in Seattle. And because I knew Seattle had a lot of really great voice actors and stage actors, and I just thought, well, this will really be fun. It'll be all new actors.
It's nice that they provided you with cans full of actors.
Oh, yeah. Actors always come in cans.
It's easy to ship. Get them right. Yeah. Awesome.
So we started casting, and first of all, before I talk about Jen's casting, because that is a little story in and of itself, we saw all sorts of great voice actors come in. Jeff Steitzer was one of them. And he was reading for the part of Master Chief. And out of everybody that we did in Seattle, I liked his voice as Master Chief the best. And I think apparently, according to Jeff, we somehow must have told his agent that he got the part, which is kind of a shame that we would say that and not really give it to him. But for some reason, I just remember thinking, wow, you know, the person who I really think has the perfect voice for Master Chief, the way I envision it, is actually Steve Downs in Chicago. And I thought, well, I still like Tim DiDabo and Pete Stacker and other friends that I had back in Chicago. And I thought, well, if I fly back for those guys, I'll go ahead and fly back for Steve too. So that's, I think, I don't know what I did, Steve. Did I call you and say, do you want this part? What happened?
Yeah, well, my recollection of it is, and that's why this is so great to do, because it will confirm or deny stories I've been telling for years. So my recollection is that you and I first met when you brought me in to do a small character in Septerra Corps.
Right. Gunner.
That was Gunner. I was Gunner in Septerra Corps. And that was the first video game I ever did. And I want to say it was a year later, some time passed.
Yeah.
And I believe you called my agent, and then my agent called me and asked me to come in for Master Chief. And my recollection of it is that which to me is the most personally interesting part of this whole saga is that I don't remember auditioning for you. I believe you just brought me in. Here's the script. Go. And so I often say, the biggest gig of my life, I never auditioned for, which is, bizarre to say, in the world of the voice actor, you're auditioning 99 and 9/10% of the time, and you're booking in that remaining 1/10 of 1%. So the job that turned out to be, Master Chief was one that I never auditioned for. So, and the other interesting part to me was, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe you were familiar with me from when I was working at the Loop and the Drive, probably not the Drive, but the Loop on the air. I was a disc jockey, and my understanding was that that's how you knew that I existed. And
I'm trying to remember how I first, if it was just whoever was that Voices Unlimited.
That would have been Voices Unlimited. Yeah, Voices Unlimited. Yeah.
I love that you were listening to the radio and you're like, "Yeah, Master Chief, more fog hats."
Yeah. Whatever you're about to say next, Marty, that makes for a much more interesting story.
I honestly can't remember hearing you on the radio. I think I just heard, and this is when I was casting for Subterracor, which had a huge number of actors in it.
Yeah.
Subterracor just was a huge pile of actors. And that's different than a can of actors.
It's different than a can.
Wow, they come in piles in Chicago.
Well, in Chicago, they came in piles, yes.
Yeah.
Believe me, they come in piles.
Yeah.
But I heard Steve's voice probably on Voices Unlimited's site, and then cast, had you come in, and you probably did audition at some point for the Subterracor people. But and what's funny to me, the little side story here is that the part you played in Subterracor, Gunner, which you say was a small part, and compared to some of the parts, it was small. But in terms of total number of words said, it probably, that script for Subterracor for you was total more words than you've said in at least the 5 Halos I did with you. So,
well, Marty, I'm glad you cleared that up, but I'm sticking with my story.
No, I remember now. I was driving along, and every day I would listen to you on the radio, and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I got to get that guy. Who is that?" All right,
that's the one I'm sticking with, and I'm going to include Jen's fog hat reference too, because I think that really sweetens it.
Yes,
anytime you can put fog hat in the mix,
you can't go wrong.
Enlivens the story. Yeah,
it does. It does. Well, thank you for clearing that up.
Yes, and then so the thing was that I still wanted Jeff Steitzer. I just said, you know what? I think he'd be great, because we had him play with some different voices, and he was able to do some really kind of over the top stuff, all that stuff that he does. And, it was like, well, that's not going to be right for Master Chief. But then I was thinking, that'd be cool for the game announcer, the guy who says all the fun things for the game. Right. So I think, it turns out that his voice, the 3 people that we're talking about here, Jen, Steve, and Jeff, probably have the most iconic voices in the Halo series. And it's just so important that we, that those are the voices everybody knows, and it's wonderful. So, okay, now, Jen.
Go ahead, Steve. Before we move on, I want to interject one thing. If I had a nickel for every time somebody asks me to do double kill, triple kill, and I'm not Jeff. I'm not
that guy.
Yeah, no, do it anyway. So, it all sort of comes around, I guess.
Yeah.
Nobody asks me to do that.
But you actually do it well. So, like, who's going to know?
Not as well as Jeff.
Well, that's funny, because I think I'll just get this one out of the way quick. As there was someone who was asking, I saw some question that sort of asked about this, but with Jeff, every time we brought him in, especially that first time, it was just like, okay, here's the words, and it'd be like double kill, triple kill, and I say, okay, yeah, put some more you put some more intensity into it. Double kill. And so he had like 3 or 4 levels of intensity, and like he got up to the top one. And I'm like, okay, that's a little overacty. You know, it's funny, but it's a little too much. So dial it back. So we sort of ramp him up one side, and then we dial him back one, and that's the takes we always took. But I do find every once in a while, especially if I'm not directing, sometimes Jeff ends up going into that 5th level, and I'm like, you know what? Yeah, I still like a better dialed back 1 degree.
Yeah. So he goes to the 7th circle.
Yeah.
But I will say this, Marty, and to everybody out there who's, an aspiring voice actor, or maybe more to the point, an aspiring director or writer director, is, at least for me personally, the way people who I've worked with have gotten the best out of me is exactly the way Marty described it, where you take it to just that point where you've gone too far, and then you say, okay, dial it back a notch, and then you hit the sweet spot. Because the problem with a lot of voice actors, myself included, is, they'll say, okay, do a little more, and you end up doing a little more, as in 1/10 of a degree, when really what they want is, no, take it another block or 2. And then just at that point when you go over the top, there's like, yeah, okay, bring that back a notch, and we got it. And that works.
And it's funny, of course, with the Master Chief character, it was, we knew right from the beginning, and I knew you were going to be able to just nail it, which is that, man, a few words, Clint Eastwood, a few dollars more, the whole thing.
That was the direction.
Immediately. Yeah, as soon as we gave that to you, you were right there. So, your range was still very constrained. Like we really wanted that constrained thing. So like I would listen to takes of Steve after the session, and I was choosing from, 5, I won't. I won't. I won't. I'm not saying, because we kept saying, no, just keep it more narrow. No, real focus. Yeah. And then you would do the perfect one. And it's it was kind of ridiculous. Like, you rarely had any lines, at least in the first couple of Halos, that were over like 4 words.
No, that's right. That's absolutely right.
I still remember you looking through the script saying, am I in this? And we're like, yeah.
Exactly. Just be patient. Bear with me. Oh, here's my line. Cortana.
But see, it's not about the number. It's about the power behind it.
That's
Jen, on the other hand, was chatty Kathy, Jen Taylor for Cortana. It was a great combination. I still think, and this was mostly, I think, Joe Staten's writing, but that great relationship between Cortana and Master Chief. It was just this great contrast of, AI and cybernetic super soldier and chatty Kathy and a man of few words. It was just a really fun dynamic. And I think you guys just, the chemistry between you was amazing, considering you never met.
Yeah.
Our buddy movie.
What'd you say?
A buddy movie.
Our buddy movie.
Yes. So with Jen, Jen was one of the Seattle actors that I was excited to listen to, and she came in and auditioned. Now, my memory, Jen, is that Joe didn't give me any indication that he knew you, because he didn't
want. That's what he said to me. Yeah.
Is that what he said?
Yeah, that's what he told me.
Okay, yeah. So, because he didn't want me to think that he wanted to pressure me to cast you. But he did know you.
Joe and I didn't know each other very well. We had gone to the same college.
Right.
And we had lived in the same dorm. So I knew who he was, but I didn't.
That's in Chicago, actually, right? That was.
Yeah.
Was it UFC? No, it was
Northwestern.
Yeah.
Yeah, outside Chicago. Yeah.
And by the way, have we clarified who Joe is to the audience?
The audience here, they worship Joe.
They don't need that. Okay.
They don't need that. But I will clarify. Joe Staten he's the voice of the Grunt, and he's also the writer behind Halo, the original Halos. And he's sort of my nemesis in the voice studio because we banter a lot, but we're close friends and love each other very much.
You guys were a good comedy team. I remember that.
Well, we'll keep things kind of loose. But
Yeah.
so with Jen, we had you come in, and at the time, I think we were still considering a British accent. And that was some of the lines were written with British sawed off and all that stuff, which didn't get changed, which is actually funny. But you did a great British accent. But I was remember looking at your resume, and I saw that you had just been the voice of Kate Archer in
right.
Yeah, in some game. And Kate Archer had a British accent. And so I thought, oh man, if we hire Jen and have her do a British accent, the players are just going to say, oh, Kate Archer is in Halo. So I thought, well, maybe we shouldn't do a British accent. So I asked you just to do kind of your natural voice, which I thought was great. I thought it worked wonderful. Joe liked it. And so we said, oh, okay, well, that's the end of Cortana being British.
That's interesting. I had no idea that was the reason why.
That was it had nothing to do with your capabilities of nailing a British accent, because it was Kate Archer was spectacular. But I just thought, all right, I just need it to be a different character. And when you just did your natural voice, it sounded great. So that was what we did with that.
Oh, my favorite.
That's my memory of how we gave it to you.
My story, Jay Wineland.
Yes.
Who engineered the first few Halos, told me, I'll always remember this. He's like, yeah, I remember it was between you and another woman, and I could have gone either way, really.
That's right.
He told me that like 5 years ago, and I was like, oh, okay, Jay, thanks for the honesty. Wow. Yeah, well, of course, right? Like,
and you already knew Jay because he was in the theater business in Seattle too, right? Had you worked with Jay?
I didn't know Jay until I met him, and I didn't know he was involved in theater.
Oh, okay, because he did a lot of sound design for theater in Seattle, and his wife, Heather, you know her, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but that wasn't until after.
It wasn't until after. Okay.
No.
Yeah, so that was the casting of Master Chief and Cortana, and the rest is history. I mean, none of us thought. I mean, I thought that what we were working on was really cool, and as a gamer, I would be really excited to play this game. And the sound design and the music and the acting and the story and the gameplay, I just thought everything was really great. And, maybe people would like it for, 6 months.
Yeah, right.
Maybe we'll sell. Could we even sell 1 million units? That would have just, that would have been so amazing. And if people still liked it for 6 months, that would be amazing. And that would have been a hit. That would have been considered a hit.
Right.
But the idea that it would be like the idea that we'd all be talking about it 22 years later.
Yeah.
It's insane. So tell me about how did you, Steve? I know you got a story that you got to tell here, if you don't mind, but how you realized Master Chief was a big deal. Can you tell that one?
Absolutely. So I want to say that this may have been actually after Halo 2, believe it or not. But again, as we talked about before we came on, the memory, turns to mush after a while.
Fuzzy.
But it was sometime later, as they say. And the thing about voice acting is when you go in to do a job, you do the job. And unless you're still getting residual checks, you really don't pay much attention to it after that. And as we all know, sadly, there are no residual checks in video games. So after doing the sessions, I completely forgot about it, 100%. Because I wasn't a gamer, so I was not involved in the gaming world. And then months go by, and I was down in, I think it was Palm Beach, Florida, with my girlfriend at the time, visiting her brother and his family. And we were all sitting around, and I remember her brother would tell the kids, well, Steve he's a disc jockey back in Chicago. He's does the morning show, he's a big deal and all this. Kids couldn't have been more unimpressed if they tried.
Whatever.
Yeah, exactly. I believe that was the exact. Well, he did. He does commercials. Sometimes you can hear him on a commercial on television. Yawn. no interest whatsoever. And the next day, I'm walking through the living room, and the kids are playing Halo. And I stopped, and I'm like, wait a minute. I think I voiced a character in this game. Well, the kids, now I got their attention, and they immediately, what? I said, yeah. I think it was this game. I did a voice for one of the characters. Which character? I don't remember. But I think he was, kind of the main guy in the game. And they said, Master Chief. And I said, yeah, that's it, Master Chief. And within a half an hour or so, every kid in the neighborhood was bringing over a copy of Combat Evolved or their Xbox or something for me to sign. And this came out of the blue. I had no idea that was, the game was what it was. And it was, basically a life-changing experience. And that's pretty much a true story.
I love that story. It's just like, of course, the time between doing a voiceover session, and of course, a voiceover session is, at most 3 hours.
At most, yeah.
And I think for your stuff, you only had like 8 words, so it went pretty fast, I believe.
Yeah. Although I do remember what I fondly refer to as the kill sessions, which I think we did on a separate day, and I had to be careful about it. Now the kill sessions are when you the player, get Master Chief killed, and he's got to make the appropriate noises, and you go through the various. Okay, so this time you're falling off a cliff and your right arm's been severed. Go. Okay, this time you're been, dropped into a vat of fire. Go. So you got to give all these, variations of being killed or wounded or whatever.
Yes.
And
small pain, big, medium pain, big pain.
Exactly. And I had to be careful
Short
because
death, dramatic death. We had them all. Yeah.
Exactly. And I still had a radio show to do, and those are the types of sessions that could, at least take you out for a day. And I remember doing it, and I remember thinking when that session was over, that's the first time I ever thought I really earned my money that day.
Well, you know what? And of course, the thing is that we hear all of your death screams and pain screams, especially for Halo 1, it's just your voice in multiplayer because everybody is running around as Master Chiefs, and everybody's death voice and scream pain voice and all that is just you, Steve. So you are heard in multiplayer so much. And then there was funny while we were testing, and I don't know if you can still do this, but I bet you can because it's a famous it's just a famous way of screaming like you're falling off a cliff, but it was done by, I think it's by Goofy in Disneyland, Disney World. You remember what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yes. And so we had that. I thought it was so funny that I put it in the game as for when you fall off the cliff. And at the time we were, doing this, we always could do this. You could always know exactly what was happening, what caused somebody to die. So falling off a cliff was an actual thing. And I had that sound happen when you fell off a cliff, along with a bunch of other variations of death. And I just thought it was funny. I thought it was like, well, maybe I'll have it in there and it'll be used really rarely and it'll just cause people a little chuckle. Well, during our internal testing, something broke. And every time you died, it didn't matter what way you died, that Goofy sound happened. And I remember the testers went almost insane because it was just constantly doing woo, just all over the studio. You would hear it. And I'm like, what is going on? And they're like, Marty, get rid of that voice. That's horrible. It's killing us.
It's not working.
And I'm like, no, something's broken. Anyway, I don't know. Somebody in the audience probably knows. Did we ship that? Is it in the code someplace? Because there are people who have modded the code and they've broken open all of the original stuff. It might still be in there someplace.
Wow.
So if somebody can answer that in stage chat, and somebody else can tell me that they know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, and of course,
somebody says it's still there, but it's really rare.
Okay. All right. Good. Yeah, I thought it was funny. And then, but I drove all the engineers and testers crazy because they had to keep testing regardless, and it was the only sound they heard. It was so funny. But that happens a lot. You do a lot.
I'm totally lurking.
Yes.
Sack man. Sorry, I'm reading the chat. I am reading the chat. I'm lurking.
Should not be reading the chat.
Don't be reading the chat.
Okay.
If you read the chat, you'll be distracted.
Okay.
So Jen, how about you? You came in, did your Cortana. You were, so much fun to work with. You were in Seattle. You ended up being friends with Jay and Joe and everybody. But when did you kind of realize that Halo was actually, and Cortana was actually kind of a thing that people actually were fans of?
Halo's a thing?
Well,
I wish you would have broke it to her easy there, Marty.
Wow. I don't remember. People have asked me this before, and I really don't remember. It took a long time. I remember thinking when Halo 2, when I got the call to come do Halo 2, to record Halo 2, I remember thinking, oh, well, that's nice. I guess Halo, I guess Halo must have been a success. That's cool. We're doing another one. Great. And I remember you guys talking about how much people liked Cortana, and that you, at the time, you didn't want, I think this was CJ had joined you guys at this point, that you didn't want anybody to know who voiced Cortana. Do you remember this? You guys just wanted, not that you didn't want people to know what my name was, but you just didn't want people to really, at that point, it wasn't being advertised because you didn't want big stars to play the roles. You didn't want people to think about the face of the person as opposed to the character, right? You didn't want, so I was really checked out from it for a long time because that wasn't something, they wanted the people to be sort of unknown, was my experience of it
that's
in the beginning.
So I wonder if I was slightly misunderstood, or you heard something from somebody that made you think more severely about this. But what I remember is that after Halo 1 was a hit, and I've talked about this before, we started getting Hollywood agents saying, okay, for the next one, you really got to step it up, and you need to bring these people. And we've gotten inquiries, believe it or not.
Julia Roberts will play Cortana.
Exactly. That's the true story. So it was.
That's a true story?
Yes, the true story.
Wow.
So Julia Roberts had somehow made it be known that she was a fan of Halo and was like, wouldn't it be, she'd be interested in being Cortana. And I think Tom Cruise did the same thing with Master Chief.
I've heard that.
Now, I didn't talk to Julia or Tom specifically. I think somehow their agents called and made it be known that they were like, if we were really smart, we would now move to the big leagues. Mm-hmm. And that's when...
Would they have wanted to do video games? That's interesting. At that point? I mean, now it's different.
Yeah, now it's different. But I think even then, if we would get actors in Hollywood interested because they actually enjoyed playing the game.
They played the game, yeah, right. Yeah,
so that's the Nathan Fillion story, as you know, which is another funny story we'll tell about soon. But it was really fun because suddenly Halo had sort of arrived and in culture, and Hollywood stars they liked the Xbox and they had it and they played it and they played it with their friends, and then they were like, well, I'd like to be in this, and somehow they let it be known. And that was when we were like, oh boy, this will be a disservice to the fans. Number one, we shouldn't change actors in between games, even though it was 3 years between games. I didn't want to change actors that were working spectacularly well. I knew everybody would notice that. And then, of course, it's like, oh, yeah, we're no longer using Jen Taylor. We're using Julia Roberts. I think it would have just been sort of this Bungie's gone Hollywood and they don't care about the fans. And so So that I think was what we were trying to explain. We weren't. I don't remember trying to make you not. I advertised the fact that you were the voice of Cortana. I don't remember that.
Oh, I wouldn't have known that was a thing to advertise, frankly. I would have been like, what? So,
yeah. Who's going to care? What?
Well, I don't remember. I really don't remember. I remember going to a couple conventions, I feel like for Halo 2, like going to, I'm sorry, not a full convention, but showing up at a gathering of fans and being surprised at how many people were there. I remember that, and signing autographs. But I think that was after Halo 2.
Yeah. And I think we brought you to E3 before Halo 2.
Yes.
Just before Halo 2 released, we brought you.
Yeah, and that's when I got the doll with the boobs. Little Cortana doll who had big boobs. And I suddenly was like, whoa, boobs. Whoa.
Yes, I remember that.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, because Cortana in Halo 1, like we've talked about, was more demure, perhaps we would say, I guess.
Well, she was Nefertiti, right? I mean, that was, I remember that.
Yeah. And then Halo 2, it was a different guy who modeled.
He was a boob guy. He was a total boob guy.
Yes, he was. He felt like that needed to happen a little bit. So it was, we weren't in control of everything. I didn't actually kind of notice until like I probably when you pointed it out, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's different.
Really, Marty, you didn't notice? Come on. I've heard that before.
You've heard that before. So
I don't exactly remember.
Yes,
but that's kind of. Yeah.
No, I remember because this guy, I won't name his name, but he had a girlfriend who we all knew, and he sort of started modeling Cortana after his girlfriend. And believe it or not, I think what you see is dialed back pretty severely.
Whoa!
Wow. Okay.
Well, okay. Well done.
There's another episode.
Yes. But I mean. When Halo 4 came out, I think, I'm not sure how many people know this, but Jen, I think both Jen and Steve, they had new performance capture actors, right? Mm-hmm. That they did. Yes. And I think, Steve, you know the guy, right? Is that?
Yeah. Well, he's still Bruce Thomas. He's still the performance capture guy. Okay. He's the guy, he was on 4.5 and he's on Infinite.
Okay.
Great guy. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I remember hearing through the grapevine, because I was, of course, still at Bungie and we weren't working on 4, but I had heard through the grapevine from one of the original designers there that they were thinking, well, they're just going to, we're just going to sort of hit the reset button and we're doing everything performance capture and we're capturing the dialogue live. And so it's going to be a new Cortana and a new Master Chief voice. And I think I just said, okay. That might be a mistake. And I think Jen, you and I might have even had coffee. And I said, "Did you get a call from the Halo 4 people?" And you're like, "No, I don't think I'm going to be in it." And I'm like, "Okay, I think that's going to be a mistake." That's all I remember thinking. I probably shared that with a couple people. I don't know when the sort of backlash happened during the production where the people at 343 realized, yeah, we better just get Steve and Jen in here to replace the voices. So do you guys remember how you got the calls on that one?
Yes, go ahead. You go ahead.
I got a call. They said, hey, we'd like to test this out and see how, we've done the motion capture and we're wondering about doing some ADR. Over this person's performance, and we're wondering if we just want to see if that can work. So that was the call that I got. So I went in and I realized partway through, I don't know how in depth I should go into this, but I realized partway through that I was auditioning. I was auditioning for Cortana. Because there were about 15 to 20 people in the room. And yeah, and most of it, it's so interesting. Most of, a few of them have stuck out in my mind who were there, who are not, like Kiki Wolfkill is now one of my super close friends, and she was there at the time.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, when I first met Kiki? I don't remember. Anyway, there were a whole bunch of people in the room, and one of them said to me, "So, you've played this character very stoically in the past. And I'm just wondering, were you directed to do that?" And I said, "Well, yeah, and she's had some tender, sensitive moments, but yeah, I mean, she's in battle most of the time, right?" Mm-hmm. And I realized, and he said, "Well, there's a lot more emotional things that happen in this game." And I had this dawning of like, oh, you need me to cry. You want me to cry. Did I lose you guys? Are you there?
No, I'm just laughing.
Oh, okay. It's like totally silent.
No.
You just need me to cry. Friend, that's not a problem. Here we go. I don't think they realized what they were in for at that point.
Sure.
So yeah, that's one of the main things I remember. I also remember somebody coming out to meet me in the lobby and saying, "I'm so glad you're here. Just know that half of the people in the room really want you there."
Another backhanded compliment.
That was right before I walked into the room to basically audition for these people. And I was just like, wait, what? I thought I was just coming in to do ADR. What's happening? So that was an interesting introduction, right? That was my introduction there.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, it's...
But I do remember you, Marty. I have a memory of you saying to me, "You're not doing it?" And I said, "No." And you said, "I give them 6 months." That's what I remember you saying.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just was like, it couldn't have been more obvious to me that like that would have been stepping on the third rail for Halo fans if they, "You're going to love this show. You're going to love this new game. We've replaced Cortana and Master Chief." I mean, it just was like, no, that is instant death. I knew that. But yeah, I'm glad it worked out. How about you, Steve? Because you came in relatively late, right?
Very. And in all honesty, it's exactly Jen's story, almost exactly, except that they didn't go into. I didn't know that they were trying, the ADR part. I just remember saying it was a technical thing that they wanted to check out, that they were trying some new equipment, I believe was what was said. So would I come in and read these lines? I mean, there was and so going into the session, there was an assumption, we're doing another Halo game. Great. Oh, it's fantastic. And again, just like Jen, halfway through the session, I realized I was auditioning. And in all honesty, I get it.
Yeah, me too. I totally understood that. I was like, you guys don't know us.
And first of all, we're working with almost an entirely new crew. Secondly, they were taking these characters in a different direction than we had gone. And in my case, it was like, is this guy up to do this? Can he? I mean, he's great at yelling Cortana, and I won't. What if we go to like 2 or 3 sentences? Is he going to hang in there? And so I remember I wanted the gig so bad. I remember having this internal conversation mid-session with myself saying, give it everything you've got. Hold nothing back and leave it all. Don't walk away from this session, as I've done in other sessions and other things where we always in the voice actor world, we talking about, having your elevator conversation as you're leaving the studio and going down the elevator. All of a sudden you think of the perfect way you could have delivered that line that would have got you the gig. Yeah. Well, I was having that conversation mid-session. And I thought, you have nothing to lose. Give it everything you got. Take it as far as you can go, and it'll either work or it won't. and fortunately, it worked. But it was a unique moment where you just have to, I had to believe in myself. I just had to believe you're this guy, and you've done it for 3.5 games, and you want to keep doing it, so give it everything you got. And thank God it worked. And really, thank God for the fans, whoever it was, that at the process, and I'm not privy to where it happened or how it happened, but my feeling was that somehow fans were involved. And fans, whether they were doing beta testing or, and Marty, you would know how this works because I don't. Yeah. But I assume that at some point, they test out this thing and say, is this working? And that the feedback was, yeah, no, the game's great, but who's that guy and who's that girl? Because that's not who we know. That's not Cortana, and that's not Master Chief. So I always feel, to this day, indebted primarily to the fans of the game who wanted it the way they wanted it.
Well, I learned my lesson between Halo 2 and 3 that even though there was 3 years in between, and I thought, well, nobody's going to remember certain voices, and there was we had a Miranda who did great, but there's some people in the studio didn't think she quite nailed it, and so it was like, well, okay, well, maybe we'll recast Miranda with a different actress. And, it was sort of it might not have been quite that casual of a thing, but I just didn't think it was going to be a big deal. And it turned out. It was a big deal. It was a big deal. Wow. And we also ended up having to cast, we had Michael Wincott, he was one of those actors in Hollywood that, was not super well known, but has just a spectacularly incredible voice. He's a great actor. He's been in a lot of really cool movies. And we got him to be the Prophet of Truth. And he just knocked it out of the park. But if you guys remember this, because it's all, union stuff, we did a union contract, and there were conditions about reusing any of the voice work in anything else. If it goes into a commercial, there's more fees that are generated and everything else. Well, his agent apparently had said, look, you need to inform Michael if there's a commercial with his voice in it, so he can approve it and do all these things. And I was like, yeah, of course. And then, of course, Halo 2 Crunch hit, and nobody remembers who was doing anything, and we were all crazy. And a commercial was made, and Michael Wincott's voice was in it, and it hit the airwaves. And I'm like, oh, weren't we supposed to do that? And sure enough, we got this really angry call from his agent, and then he was just really insulted by the fact that we didn't live up to our end of the bargain. And Joe and I apologized. We it'll never happen again. We you're great. What can we do? And he went sort of after Microsoft to get extra fees and the rest of it, and finally settled whatever it was. But at that point, he was like, basically just said, I don't ever want to do video games again, that they're all and stuff.
Wow.
Oh, we missed it. And so we replaced him with an actor named Terrence Stamp, if you know who that is.
Yeah.
You do? Yeah. And Terrence Stamp, I thought, well, he is just, he's a spectacularly great actor. He's British. He's going to do the Prophet of Truth this whole other new way. And boy, the fans to this day, like, why did you replace Michael Wincott with Terrence Stamp? And I'm like,
wow,
kind of a long story, but why do you care? Oh, huge care. Huge care.
Wow, interesting.
So I learned, pretty fast that you were
like, I'm sorry, this is General freaking Zod, yo. That's what you said.
Exactly. Bow before Zod. How cool can you be besides
bow before Zod?
Yes. Yeah. By the way, Terrence was a blast to work with. But yeah, there was sort of a backlash. Like, why did you replace that person? Like it's so you have to be really careful. That's all I would say is once the fans, we had a voice in Halo 1 that was a late addition, believe it or not. It was the voice, and people in the audience are going to know who I'm talking about. It was the voice of Foehammer, which is just a ship pilot that flew around. And she got more and more lines, and these lines were being written by designers. They weren't part of the script I saw, so I never cast her, and I didn't even know what this was until way late. And I wasn't super thrilled with who we got and the performance we got. I sort of thought, well, it's weaker than I was.
But people had grown, they had affection for her, is what you're going to say.
But now it's like Foehammer. Oh, we remember Foehammer. She was great. I loved Foehammer. And I'm like, okay, well then once you put somebody in the game, that's it. They're in.
I wonder if people remember the Life Pod pilot Marine.
Oh, I was just going to ask you about that. Yes, do it.
He was amazing. I don't even remember. I have no idea.
Okay, just say, we're coming in hot. I'm losing her.
In hot. Losing her. Was I low? But I have no memory of it. I actually just looked it up. Did I have a dialect? I had a sort of dialect, didn't I? Some weird
little southern thing.
Oh, God.
There was like 2 extra lines we needed another woman for, and we're like, "Hey, Jen, could you be this dropship pilot?" And so you did that, and you did great. Nobody knew it was Cortana. And what's funny is I think you say, "We're losing her." And then you crash, and then the next voice that you hear as a player is Cortana. Chief,
it's Cortana.
Are you okay? And I thought, oh my gosh, I didn't know that Jen's 2 personalities would be the 2 voices you hear back to back, and nobody noticed it. Nobody noticed. So.
Yeah. I bet there are people. Let's see. I'm going to go over to the chat right now. Yeah, somebody's saying I never noticed it. If only they saw the chat right now. I'm seeing the chat right now, friends. I never knew that. Oh, yeah. People are surprised. There's somebody out here who's going, what? Yeah. Ed, do not look at the chat. I keep getting that. Stop looking at the chat.
That's what's good about the big stage. You don't have to pay attention to the chat.
Love you too. Somebody just said they loved me. Love you. Okay. Here I am.
Jen,
I'm not looking at the chat anymore. I'm not.
Jen.
Sorry.
That person that said they love you, they don't even know you.
Yeah.
Whoa.
I'm just saying.
Okay, before how are you doing on time? I know we got a little bit of a late start, but I don't want to.
No. I'm fine. I'm having too much fun.
Okay, good.
Which drink is it tonight? It is 5 o'clock there.
It is the usual.
But
yes, gin and tonic.
Mm-hmm. Did you play golf today? You couldn't have.
I did play golf today, and I actually shot well. Thank you very much.
What did you shoot? Like what kind of?
Well, we don't need to get into specifics, Marty. But
okay. Well, if you feel you shot well, that's all I need to know.
Here's the part: the last 4 or 5 times I played, I was horrible. So I was on the verge of blowing my head off, or hitting myself right between the eyes with a putter, or having a good game. And I had a good game. So
now, Steve, are you still in Chicago now? Or are you in Florida?
No,
where are you?
I'm in Sarasota, Florida.
Oh, okay.
We've been, although we just purchased a place back in Chicago to spend the summers there because Florida is insufferably hot in the summer months. And we love Chicago, and my wife has family, and we all have friends up there, and we just miss it a lot. And so we'll be back in Chicago for the summer, which will be great.
So funny. I'm such a Pacific Northwesty girl because I spent 1 summer in Chicago, and I thought that was insufferable. I just was like, I took a shower, and I got out of the shower, and I'm dripping in sweat again. How do people do that? Oh, I didn't have air conditioning in my apartment. So.
And the humidity in Chicago is not good, but it pales in comparison, I believe, to Sarasota.
Pales in comparison, yes, indeed.
Well, yeah.
And of course, where I am is a dry heat. Just so
it's a dry heat, as is a microwave, Marty. So that's also a dry heat.
Yes.
Now,
so how's Vegas? Are you?
Yeah. What's
are you going to see all the shows, Marty? Whoa.
That's me. I'm a big show guy. Yeah. We have not seen
Britney
a single
Spears show is not happening there anymore, right? Because I know you'd be first in line. Britney Spears, she had a show there.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I missed that one.
Yeah.
Nuts.
Is the Beatles show still happening there?
It is still there, and I have seen the Beatles show. I saw that. I saw that about a month before I met Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Because with my daughter lived in Las Vegas.
Wow, I haven't heard you drop that in so long. It feels good. It feels refreshing to hear you
Yes,
say
it
that
does.
again.
Yeah, I was going to bring it up, but
Yeah.
But it was really fun because even at the time we saw the show in Las
Really
Vegas.
fun when you met Paul McCartney.
No, it was not the time I met Paul McCartney.
Sorry.
But at the show in Las Vegas, I wanted to see.
You went with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
yeah, that happened.
Yeah, that happened. Actually, I do have some good Paul McCartney stories.
Oh, good.
I can only imagine.
Yeah. But anyway, seeing the show here and knowing that I had a shot at meeting Paul like a month later, I knew that we had a scheduled meeting that might happen. I was like really, really excited. I thought, well, this could be the pinnacle of my life that I actually have on the schedule a meeting with Paul McCartney.
Yeah.
And then I thought, well, surely he's just going to cancel the meeting. But then I could say, look, Paul McCartney canceled the meeting with me.
Exactly. You couldn't lose either way. You know?
That's right. I think I'd just cry if I met Paul McCartney. I think I'd just cry in front of him for the entire time. I'd just weep.
Speaking of crying when you meet people who are your heroes, I engineered a time where Jen could meet.
I didn't cry.
Nathan Fillion. You had told me that.
Tell the story. So
Yes,
Marty was always trying to impress me with the different people that were in the game. Like, we got so and so to be in the game, and I'd be like, oh, okay, I don't know who that is, and it drove you crazy, as I recall. And one day you said, yeah, this is for Halo 3, right?
Mm-hmm. Halo 3.
I can't remember what game it was. Halo 3. You're like, yeah. So we got. Was it Halo 3? No. Was it Reach?
It was Halo 3, yeah.
Like we got Nathan Fillion to work on the game, and I was like, "What? I know who Nathan Fillion. That's Captain Mal. I loved Captain Mal." And that was all I said, right? And so Marty logged that away, and now continue, Marty.
Well,
your story.
I'm
in LA, right? Why?
You had moved to LA.
Well, my now husband was living in LA, and so I was visiting him.
Okay. So because I think that was one of the few times that we recorded you not in Seattle, we recorded you in LA.
Yeah, I was.
Which I think is on one of those behind the scenes documentaries where you're in the booth and Joe and I are up in the same room. But we were also recording Nathan Fillion that week or something. And then I asked you to go meet me for dinner, I think.
Yeah, you and CJ.
It's me and CJ. You come and join us for dinner after the session at the Sunset Tower. And I had also talked to Nathan. I said, Nathan, the girl who plays Cortana. And he's like, I love Cortana. And I'm like, yeah, well, she kind of loves Captain Mal. Could you come over and meet her? And he says, yeah, absolutely. Where are you going to be? And when can I come? And so I had you sit with your back to the door so that he could walk in up behind you. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but maybe you can pick it up.
I do. I didn't have my back to the door. You guys did. And we were having dinner and you said, yeah, we might have another friend come later. And that's why there were some open seats. And so my husband and I were like, oh, okay, whatever. And we're having a lovely dinner and chatting with you. And you and CJ both were looking at your watch kind of funny. And I was like, what is going on? And all of a sudden, I hear from across the room, because he is Nathan, he yells across the room, Cortana! And he runs through the restaurant, which is a very nice, and I stood up because I didn't know what else to do. I felt like I was in, some movie or something. I stood up and I went, Captain Mal! And he grabbed me in this huge bear hug and twirled me around.
Oh my God.
Yes. And I remember my husband at the time going, okay,
let's
my relationship's over.
Okay. Check, please.
And then, but what's so funny is I think he flirted. I don't know if you recall this, but I think my husband flirted more with Nathan than I did. Like he was so impressed that Nathan was there. It was pretty cute.
That's a great story.
Yes.
That is a good story. Well, I'm glad you reminded me because I couldn't remember exactly how the meeting came off. I just remember setting it up and being excited about it. But then now I sort of vaguely remember the bear hug and the twirling in the room. That's so good. I will always remember that now.
Yes, yeah.
So tell me,
there were no tears. I didn't cry.
You didn't cry, yes. But you know what? The funny thing is you did cry in Halo 3.
I know, right?
Yeah, there were many. You were crying because, and I think one of the best scenes ever is between you and Steve in Halo 3 when he rescues you. That's one of my favorite scenes for many, many reasons. The animations are great. The point in the story that it happens is great. I was able to do some music there that was sort of like solving a little Rubik's Cube for me. Like I was able to bring in 3 different themes that all had meaning. And it was this great callback to some of the earlier lines and relationships both you characters had, where, you know, it was just a wonderfully written, acted scene. So if you ever get a chance, I think, oh my gosh, I think there's somebody in my Marty Army, one of the YouTube guys. It's either Laper Larden or Bill Pill or somebody who did an analysis of that scene. I'll share it with you guys later. I'll just say, hey, go watch this because you'll really get a kick out of it.
Yeah, do.
You say, don't make a girl a promise, and then Master Chief says if you can't keep it, or Cortana says if you can't keep it, and so it's these callbacks to these earlier lines that really had some great emotional punch. And then when now you've been rescued, Cortana, after not
people are saying Laper.
Is Laper the one that has it? Okay, good. You'll get a link to that. You should watch it. But yeah, you get inserted. Your chip gets inserted back in Master Chief's helmet, and then you say the same line basically that you said at the very beginning of Halo 1, which is interesting because Halo 1, we recorded that in early 2001, and then we were recording Halo 3 in 2007. So, a solid 6 years has gone by. And it just was really fun to be able to sort of tie up all these loose ends with some great dialogue. Joe just did a great job on that. And it was Joe, Lee Wilson, who was the storyboard artist, and CJ, who was the cinematographer guy and animator. It's just one of my favorite scenes. So there you go.
Wow.
Yeah, I want to see it.
I want to see it too.
Laper.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's pretty emotional. It's an emotional moment. And you guys both did exactly the perfect acting job. So it was great.
Well, I think after I recorded my lines for that, I think I might have had the thought, God, I'd like to meet this girl. Because when Jen and I did the closing scenes in Halo 4, obviously that was the first time we had ever gotten to work together in the same room at the same time, and it's still one of my most favorite moments of the last 22 years was the time we got to do that, and
we had a good time together,
and watching Jen work I was such a fan at just watching her work. And talk about crying. There was some scenes there in the closing of Halo 4 where she cries, and then I have to react to that. And there's 2 things at work there. One is Master Chief doesn't cry, but he's obviously feeling something, and he's trying to.
He might cry, Steve.
He's never
he's
cried.
silent a lot. Maybe he's crying all the time, and that's why he can't talk.
He's crying. He's
weeping constantly for humanity.
He's crying inside, Jen.
Just inside.
That's what I'm saying.
That's all you need to know.
You don't want him to can't fog up his helmet.
You fog up the helmet. I think the Mjolnir starts to rust. I mean, just bad things happen. But,
there's so many fluids going on in there. Mjolnir's.
Okay, now you're going in a direction that.
No, we're not. But it's like
problematic.
The armor can handle tears. I'm sure.
But anyway, so we're doing these scenes, and Jen is doing her thing, and starts. She's crying, and then I got to work up whatever it is that I can, muster up, and it takes everything I have.
Story.
And when the scene is over and we're done, they, okay, cut, good. I'm literally in a puddle on the floor somewhere. Jen, who has just done this very emotional scene and cried and everything, she's like, I need another Starbucks. Anybody? Come on. I mean, are we done? And just like completely.
Never what I would have said. I need another Starbucks. Anybody? Are we done?
I
Steve,
think that's an exact quote, Jen. I think it's an exact quote. People.
Yes.
See, Jen is not a method actress.
No.
Steve, of course, is. He gets completely into the role. He's completely subsumed and lost. And Jen is just technical. She's just, where's my point? Faster, slower. Let's go. I'm out.
Wow.
Yeah. Blah, 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 blah. My line. Blah, 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 blah. My line.
What are you talking about? It would be more like blah. My line, my line, my line, my line, blah, my line.
Good point.
I don't know, Jen, if I ever told you.
A mix of the two, actually.
Yes.
A little bit method, a little bit. What?
No,
what are you going to say?
Jen, you are like such a I'm just going to say it. You are such a spectacular stage actress. I love. That's the one thing I really miss about Seattle is that I don't go to the theater now. And I mean, all the Las Vegas shows are these big extravaganzas, and it's just not my thing. I loved going to the Act Theater and the one up at Green Lake or wherever that was.
Bathhouse? That Bathhouse
yeah.
there?
Yeah. Yep.
It's a public theater now.
Okay.
Anyway. I'm in a play right now.
Yes. So what play are you in right now? And how many plays have you done? Do you even have a count for this?
No.
Oh, wow.
No. I am in a play right now, a new play by a man named Yusuf El-Gindi, which is called Hotter Than Egypt. It's a brand new play. It is nothing like Halo, but I play a woman on a trip to Egypt, to Cairo with her husband. It's their 24th wedding anniversary, and things go awry. That's all I'll say.
Comedy ensues.
Screwball comedy kind of thing, or is it something?
It's not a screwball comedy. It is I would call it a dramedy. There is, I cry a little bit. I scream a lot. If you want to hear me scream, cuss words at my husband, there you go. Wow. I don't know if I can say it on here, right? Yeah. But
you can say whatever you want on here. If we don't like it later, we'll cut it out. But there's no. I have rules for everybody else, but not for me or my guests.
Yes, it's a lovely new play by this local playwright, and we are filming it. So we're
good.
Yeah, so you could actually dream it if you wanted to. Once we close the show, which is this weekend. So if you live in the area, you can come see it this weekend. We're also going down to Marin Theater Company, and I feel like suddenly I'm selling it. In the month of April, we'll be in Marin Theater Company doing the same show.
At the Comedy Store in May.
No, and then but once we close the show here, it will be online for I think 2 weeks. You can buy it if you just go to the ACT website.
Is it a 2-person show, or is there how big a cast is it?
There are 5 of us in it.
Okay.
At ACT Theater.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do. I have done a lot of plays in the past. I haven't done. It's been nearly 3 or 4 years since I've been on stage. Actually,
is that because of COVID and other stuff? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a shame.
Yeah.
Well,
and theater is really struggling. So
yes, indeed.
What about you, Steve? Did you do any live theater, or was it always voiceover? And
no, it was. I mean, I've done a couple of my wife and I, she's also a voice actor and a stage actor, Liz Weifler. And
Liz, gosh, I know that's right.
you know Liz, yes, you do. And Liz and I both used to work for your dad.
I was just going to say, you guys both finally you did stuff on my dad's radio show, Unshackled,
all the time. I mean, the reason why she actually got me in to do it, which was just sidebar here. This was a fantastic, fun experience for anybody who would be a fan of what would you call it, Marty? Like radio plays or
radio plays. It's the old radio dramas that everybody did before TV, and my dad
was so much fun.
Directed a show that did it the old-fashioned way too, with a live sound effects guy and a live organist, the whole thing.
It was fantastic. It's the longest run, and I believe it's still on. Yeah, the longest running. What would you call it? Radio show or
radio play, radio drama?
In history, it would be in the Guinness Book of Records, and it was so much fun. It was so much fun to do because, like Marty said, we were live on a stage, multiple mic'd. You had the organist over here, and you had the sound effects person over here, and we all and Liz and I used to, it was usually done on a Saturday afternoon, and we'd come down, and your dad would rehearse us, and we'd all get, we'd have a table reading, and then go do the show, and I think when he was running it, I think we had to do it twice. I think they quit doing that after your dad left, but it was just such an experience. You felt like you were going back in time. Yeah. And
even I one of these days I'm going to see if there's any possibility of me finding. I was on the show several times when I was a kid, because every once in a while they needed a kid actor. And I wasn't any great kid actor, but I had connections, right?
Yeah. You knew somebody.
So I would go down there, I was 11 years old, and I'd play the kid, and then I was 12, play the kid or whatever. And I would do that a few times. And I thought, it would be, I wish I could find some of those tapes.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And then
stealing jobs from the 11-year-olds who are like, if only I get on the radio show.
And Marty, your sister directed several of those shows too,
that's right? Okay, yeah. So you worked with my sister Mickey, yeah.
Yes, I did, and
took over for my dad, and probably did it for a couple of years at least.
Yes, she did. But anyway, kind of a roundabout way to say no. I've never really done. I've done a couple of minor things, and a couple of TV things that were incredibly insignificant, but
that's the actor's life. See, I have such a soft spot in my heart for actors. My father was an actor. My sister was an actress. I did a little acting, but it was like the life of an actor is not an easy life, because
it's not an easy life. No.
You go from audition to audition, and you never know why you're not, accepted or you're not chosen, and you rarely get the feedback, and then you're always sort of second guessing, and then you get some gig, and the freelance actor is just always kind of on the lookout for the next gig. Like you said you got the gig, and you were just happy to get the gig, and it's like that's a tough life.
But Marty, I have to say, I wish that every person who has been in your position had that empathy, because I gotta believe they don't. To have the empathy that you just expressed for, what an actor goes through in just trying to get to the goddamn audition, much less get the gig.
Yeah,
and my guess would be that most of the people who were in your position of casting and directing and working with actors probably don't have that sensitivity. And I may be wrong, and Jen would know better than I, but my guess is I'm not wrong about that.
Well, if you're just trying to say that I'm your favorite director, then that's okay. You can
just go ahead and say it. Marty, I enjoyed tremendous. Working with you was a joy, and there are certain people that have a way of getting the most out of you that even you as the actor don't know you have. And you were one of those people. And
thanks. I was fishing, but you don't need to keep going. That's all right.
Well, go on. No,
Go on.
stop.
All right,
Don't make me dance.
This whole other life that you have, and especially when you were Master Chief all those years, and of course doing was it, 3 hours drive time a day? Well, how much?
5 hours. It was a 5-hour radio show.
Oh,
yeah.
5-hour show every day for how many years?
44 years.
Oh my gosh, Steve! That
44 years. I started when I was 2, by the way, just in case anybody.
It had to be a relief for you.
A very talented toddler.
Yes.
Yes.
Our script had so few words, and you had just been talking for 5 hours. Of course, you're not talking the entire 5 hours. It's not a talk show, but
no, it wasn't a talk show. It was a music show. But you know what? That's what I said earlier in the conversation. We I talked about how I never auditioned for Master Chief. I always felt that radio and my job as a disc jockey was actually a hindrance to my voiceover career rather than a help. Most people would think it's a natural, and for most people who come up into the voice acting business through radio, they quit radio to do voice acting. They don't do both. And, I was doing both because, you know what, I was getting paid every 2 weeks.
Right.
So, that meant a lot to me. But I often feel like it hindered my voice acting career because, when you're doing a radio show, you develop a certain, whatever it is, a character or persona, whatever, much like you do when you're going in to read a script for a job. And it was hard to, after doing that for 5 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and then get off the air, go to an audition and expect to lose that guy and pick up this other guy was not something I don't think I was particularly good at. And, that's why it was always, that's why I always go back to the story of you discovering me on the radio because it made.
That was your audition.
Yeah, that was. It was like
that was my audition. Yeah, even though it's not true.
I was listening to "Go Ride, Take It Easy," and then amazing voice guy came on. Right, that was Foghead.
Yeah, Foghead.
You're like, wow, that just set me up. I'm feeling
That's the guy.
good. I'm taking it easy. I want to take it easy with this guy.
Oh,
God, we all need more Foghat.
Foghat.
We all need more Foghat. Yeah.
So true.
Well, so that's just and you. Now, I was looking at something recently, and it looks like you were in a rock band when you were a youngster. Is that correct?
Oh yeah, no, I was in a rock band. Going back to Paul McCartney when the Beatles hit Ed Sullivan.
Paul McCartney.
My future was set.
Yeah.
I remember that. You talk about remembering things like it was yesterday. I can remember being in my home in Columbus, Ohio, on the Sunday night when the Beatles came on Ed Sullivan, sitting in the living room, and my world as I knew it changed exponentially. Yeah. And I already had a guitar because I had a mild interest when Elvis Presley came out, but then, that lasted for a couple of weeks and, I moved on.
You know what you're revealing right now, which I'm loving, is that usually, as you can tell by my handle, Marty the Elder, I'm always the oldest person in the room, but not today.
not today. Not today, my friend. But I remember that day like it was yesterday, and I immediately got with my best friend across the street, and we formed a band. And I was in a rock band. I played guitar for a while, and then I found out I was a better drummer than I was a guitar player, and played drums. But that lasted all the way through junior high, high school, and college. And then, and actually, that's what got me into radio because at some point we actually had a promoter come to see us one time and said, He was a typical cigar smoking. I'm gonna make you a star, kid, and I'm gonna put you on the road with Free Dog Night. What do you think of that?
Wow.
So, we were on college at the time, and we had to make a decision about whether I was going to drop out of school and go on the road with Free Dog Night, or
it's coming.
There you go. I could have been that guy, and in a moment of clarity, I thought that probably wasn't the best career move for me, but what I understood was that my passion was music, and that's what lit me up, and so I thought, maybe being a DJ at a radio station would sort of get me into that world, because what I really wanted to be was a record producer. That was my passion.
I wanted to make people stars.
Yes.
Real. Yeah. And so
I wanted to be that guy.
I wanted to be that guy, but there was back in those days. There was, the only entree into the recording business was you walked up to a recording studio and they handed you a broom and you started sweeping the floor, and that was that was how you learned how to be a record producer.
Absolutely.
And so I thought maybe going to the college radio station, and once I did, I just got hooked on that, and that was the end of that, and off I went.
Whoops, sorry.
You thought I was going to go much longer, didn't you?
No. I thought you were going to go just a little bit longer.
Off you went.
I had to get up and
then he went off.
I had to let my dog Baxter out of the room because he was bugging me, and then suddenly you stopped talking. Well, I have you reminded me of one little funny story that I'm going to tell. It's just because I think it's funny. My sister Mickey, my older sister Mickey, went to College of DuPage. If anybody knows where that is, I'm sure you do, Steve, because you're from Chicago. Of course,
yeah.
She was in the first class of College of DuPage, and
wow.
She was on stage doing acting. She was in The Crucible. She played Mary Proctor, and the judge in The Crucible was played by this other kid who was in the school named John Belushi.
Wow!
Oh my God!
Wow!
So she became really close friends with John. They were then they were in the Pirates of
the judge in The Crucible. That
I know. Can you imagine that? It's like imagining Jack Black being the judge. But anyway, and I saw it. I was a kid. I was probably a freshman in high school or something, and I remember seeing it, and I thought it was great. And I thought, well, he's good. And then I saw him and Mickey also in Pirates of Penzance, and they were hilarious. They were great in that. And so I thought, well, this guy, Mickey says, oh, he's the funniest guy I've ever met. He's so much fun. They were close friends. They were in plays together. And then he called her, and my sister decided was going to be a voice major and an actress. So she was singing. And she's got a great voice. But John called her. He said, Mickey, you got to come down. I'm in this new group down in Chicago called Second City, and you'd be great here. You got to come down and do this. And she's like, oh, well, I just got asked to be in Up with People.
Speaking of halftime shows.
Yeah.
How far we have come.
Yeah, Up with People is this like super like Pat Booney, straight-laced, choir thing. But of course, she didn't know. I mean, think of the cultural difference between Up with People and Second City in Chicago.
Yeah. Wow.
And the one thing that Mickey and I always talk about is like if she had made the decision to go down with John to Second City, she might have had this huge career.
Oh my God.
And then died when she was 38.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Wow.
So anyway, that's
a story.
Yeah, it's weird how those things go. Like you meet people and things happen, and
it is weird. I mean, we've all had those experiences where, the proverbial fork in the road, and you decide left instead of right, and it's I think at the end of the day, you just kind of have to trust your own instincts. I mean, I often think about, a number of choices, both personal and professional, and look back on them and say, wow, what if I had made the other choice? How would that have gone? And then but all these wonderful things have happened to me, and none of those would have happened. If I had made
to me is you don't always know that that's, even looking back, it's hard to know sometimes that
Yeah.
is whatever the specific choice is, the moment, right?
Yeah.
I really feel it, in all honesty, bringing this back to Halo. I remember feeling, looking back and thinking, like, what a fortuitous day it was when I auditioned for Halo. What did I have for breakfast that morning? What was it?
Yeah.
I got to replicate that,
Yeah.
I'm sure at the time it was just another audition to go
another
on.
day.
Right?
It was another audition.
It was a no big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
I had to drive out to Redmond. That was kind of a big deal. But other than that.
Yeah, I still remember meeting you out in the lobby. I think because all the
you walked me back.
People, I walked you back. Yeah, because we were in.
There were like 30 people working for Bungie at the time.
That's exactly right. I think the total development team at that moment was just around 35 or something. So if you don't count the testers, who probably weren't even doing much testing at that point, because we were all the way back to the auditioning stage. So, but yeah, I mean, none of us had a clue how big this would end up being and how long it would be going on. And I was talking to Jeff Steitzer, and I'm just still sorry that he couldn't be on the show today, but he was a little bit disappointed that he was just going to be the announcer. And I remember Jeff and Jay, I think Jay did know Jeff. I think Jeff had worked with Jay some other time. And Jay said, don't worry, Jeff.
Works a lot in town.
Yeah,
Jeff, your voice is going to be heard more than anybody's. Yeah. And he was right. So
yeah, absolutely. We kind of started this thing about talking about, our initial, interaction with each other and then with Halo. But the question I probably get asked more than any other is what you said, Marty, early on is, did you have any idea that this would be what it became? And, I know my perspective, but I'd be curious to hear your perspective on that, because, correct me if I'm wrong, was there even a plan to do Halo 2 from the beginning, or?
Didn't you say, Marty, that you had hoped it would last for 6 months and that maybe you'd sell a million?
So here was my plan. I had a nice thriving business in Chicago, and I got distracted by these idiots who were making video games. And then in a sort of a desperate move, following our studio burning down in 1999 in the middle of Chicago.
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
And Mike and I were, discussing the future, and we had hooked up with the guys at Post Effects, and we were going to be doing audio studio kinds of work for Post Effects. And I was going to just continue to go out and get gigs that would get us game music and films and commercials and stuff. And Mike was going to also work on whatever the video studio needed to have done with audio. So we were sort of splitting some stuff. And I mean, when I was, Bungie offered to hire me, and I thought, okay, that'll make life easier, because then if I'm hired and I'm audio director inside, and I still am running, with Mike, I'm running O'Donnell Salvatore. O'Donnell Salvatore can be the production arm, and I'll be the audio director inside Bungie. And the good thing is I won't have to keep revising my bid, because Bungie wanted me to say, how much is this going to cost? And I would say, well, it depends. When are you going to get anything to me? Like, what are the milestones? And it was such a, we didn't know what was happening. So I was like, Jason and Alex, the guys who owned Bungie at the time, just said, hey, Marty, why don't you just come work for us? And then you'll just work for us. And then whatever happens, you'll be inside.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. And we were literally within a block of each other. We could walk to each other's studio. Bungie had actually moved up to be close to where we were, because they used to be on the south side of Chicago in a really horrible location. And then when they would come up and use our studios for a couple of the games, Myth, the Fallen Lords, and Soul Blighter and stuff, I was a freelancer for them at that time. But they loved coming up to our studio because it was just off the Ohio Street ramp there. And
I remember it well. Yeah.
Yeah. And, it was Oh yeah, of course, because I think actually
No, we did Combat Evolved there for sure. I'm not sure about Halo 2, but
we didn't. We did Combat Evolved. Yes, we
maybe
did
I'm thinking of
Evolved.
Subterra Core. Maybe
Yes,
maybe
Subterra
that's
Core,
it.
but the studio that had burned down during Subterra Core. So I'm not sure where
okay.
Everybody's opened their studios for free to us and said, we want to help you get back on your feet. So we got to do all this recording of all these voices all around town. It was
burned
wonderful.
down.
Yeah, it was. What'd you say?
Yeah.
How did it burn down? The studio. Why did it burn? What happened?
We don't know. I accused Mike of burning it down. He accuses me of burning it down.
It's your fault.
Now, first of all, it
all
was
the lighter fluid I was drinking, and
it was in Chicago, so somebody might have dropped a match. That's all I'm saying.
What I was just saying.
Yeah.
It was there were problems in this building. It was a old brick building.
Older building.
We were on the top floor. It was a absolutely gorgeous studio. I just loved it. And one morning we woke up and we heard on the radio that there was this big fire on the Ohio feeder.
So nobody was hurt or anything.
Yeah, and then nobody was hurt. And then we got a call from the security person called and said, your alarm has been compromised and it's in the same block as this other fire that's happening. And they gave me the address of the fire, and I'm like, oh no, that's actually
our building.
That's our building. Our building was the top floor that had and anyway, we drove down. It was a pretty horrible day. But the thing I was going to say is that when I went to Bungie, it was like, okay, I really want to finish this Halo project because I really think Halo could be cool. So if I could finish Halo at Microsoft, and see it, have some success, I really believed it was going to be successful, then I'll go back to Chicago after 6 months and continue working there. I really thought I'm just going to go to Seattle. I'm going to work for Microsoft for the year or two that it takes to finish Halo, and then I'm going to go back to Chicago. That was the plan.
Did the family move out with you?
Yep, family moved out, except my oldest daughter had I just started college, so she was already out, kind of.
But they came out thinking you were going to just be there for a year or so.
Well, I didn't say that like as a definite plan, but I told my wife, I don't think, Marcy, I said, I don't think we're going to be here that long. Seattle's fine, but I don't really want to be a Microsoft employee for that long. And, once we finish Halo, who knows what's going to happen. So it was,
Dun, dun, dun.
Dun, dun, dun.
But yeah, we did not plan to do a Halo 2 until after we shipped Halo 1 and it started to have some success and we had fun watching it be successful. Then Jason Jones, at the time, I remember him coming to me saying, yeah, Marty, I really think we got to do a Halo 2. And I'm like, Jason, you hate sequels. I know you're going to be in it. And it's true. And he said, no, not this time. He says, I'm totally committed. There's so many things we didn't get to do in Halo 1 that I wanted to do, and we'll do it all in Halo 2. And I said, well, you got it. I said, you don't owe it to the team to keep going. This has been a great ride. Everybody's gotten something great out of it. Don't do this because you feel obligated. Like if you're 100% convinced you got something really great to do, then I'm in with you. And he goes, yeah, I am. I'm 100% convinced. And then, so we started. We all started working on Halo 2. And then I remember Joe and I pleading because about a year into development of Halo 2, Jason lost interest.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
And he decided he wanted to work on this other project, which was the former Phoenix team. And it was this project called Gypsum. That was the code name. And so I remember he was like, okay, but I feel like the leadership on the Halo 2 team is really good and they'll be able to keep going. And I'm like, Jason, no, don't leave.
Passing it off to you, Marty.
No.
Wow.
No, he was not passing it off to me. There was a triumvirate of very strong creative people, and but they were thrown into the deep end, and some technical stuff happened, and some other stuff happened. So anyway, Jason, about a year after he lost interest, he had to come back, So now we have one final year to finish Halo 2, and we had to really, really rejigger a whole bunch of stuff, and it became the worst crunch, probably one of the worst crunches in gaming history. So
Wow.
But people love Halo 2, so it's
yeah, that would be an understatement.
I had a cold when you recorded Halo 2.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah, I had a cold.
As did I. I think I did in Halo 1 too, but I know I did in Halo 2. And every time I hear any of the cinematics, I'm like, oh my God, listen to you. I had a cold. What could I do?
That's funny. Yeah. I don't remember Steve having a cold, but I remember Jen.
I can hear it. I don't remember it, but I can hear it. That's for sure.
It's easier for
Marty?
you to sort of cover that up because you got
Yeah.
Well, except the nose.
When you're trying to be the M's and the B's.
Well, I need a weapon. It's just yeah. All right.
I need a weapon.
I got to jump for 2 seconds just to see a man about a horse, and I'll be right back. Okay.
Wow.
Man about a horse.
I'll be right back.
Yeah.
Hey,
I wonder what the horse's name is.
Yeah, you know how to mute yourself, Steve, if you want, but it's up to you.
Yeah, please mute yourself.
No, I just don't want you to get embarrassed by saying something weird and not knowing you're still live, but it's up to you.